Good day, everyone. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day and a productive week. Today's topic is 3 leadership competencies you need to get more out of your PMP. A few years ago, I read this quote from Tom Peters. He said, "Distinguished project work is the future of work for the simple reason that more than 90% of white-collar jobs are in jeopardy today. They're in the process of being transformed beyond identification or completely eliminated." Now, we know Tom Peters says some outlandish things in the media and press and in his presentations. But I started thinking about this myself. As a PMP, what is the risk to me? How am I impacted by this? And I think this is the question that we, as project professionals, need to ask ourselves. Are we at risk to this phenomenon? Let's not get caught up in the, is it 90% of white-collar jobs? Is it 30% or so on? Are we as individuals, how does this impact me in my life? That's some of the questions we're going to try to answer today. I think a little bit of that answer to that previous question, are we at risk, lies a little bit in this slide. This slide, there's 2 words in this slide for those of you who may not be able to see it, and they are attitude matters. I'd like to tell a little story. I live outside of the Washington, D.C. area, and just northwest of me in Maryland is the Goddard Space Station, where a lot of the NASA scientists and astronomers follow satellites and space missions that NASA launches in space. And a few years ago, some of you might have remember this story. It was actually written up in several of the major newspapers, but they got these pictures back from the Hubble telescope, these pictures of these exploding galaxies millions of light years away from Earth that the Hubble was able to transmit back to the scientists at NASA. And these pictures confirmed the theory that the astronomers had for years and years. And the theory is that there's a repulsive, mysterious energy in the universe that causes everything to move away from each other at an ever-increasing rate. In other words, at an atomic level, particles are moving away from each other, and the further they get from each other, the faster they move. And they had this theory for years and years, and these pictures that they got back from the Hubble telescope finally proved this theory that this is actually true. And they actually have a name now for this mysterious, repulsive energy in the universe. It's called dark energy. And they can now actually prove through the technology that they've deployed that this actually does exist in the universe today. Now, some of you may be asking yourselves, what is this guy talking about dark energy for? What does this have to do with projects and the organization that I'm in and the challenges that I face? Well, when I heard this story, I said to myself, just like you, have you ever worked on a project where you feel everything is moving away from each other at an ever-increasing rate? In other words, this negative, repulsive energy seems to overcome your project team and your organization and causes everything to move away from each other. Well, I read this story and I sort of wiped the head of my brow and said, "Phew, thank goodness it couldn't be me. It's the law of nature. It's this dark energy, so it certainly couldn't be me or my attitudes and behaviors." Just a little tongue-in-cheek there, but I think everybody can relate to that type of an experience on projects. And I do think attitudes do matter. And attitudes matter because they drive our behaviors. Attitudes drive our behaviors, and our behaviors drive attitudes in other workers. And their attitudes in turn drive their behaviors, which in turn, their behaviors in turn drive the attitudes of people around them. So it becomes sort of this cycle, this connected cycle where our attitudes and behaviors are all very much linked within the team. And we can look at this as an opportunity, or I would encourage you to look at this as an opportunity. We know that negative energy pulls people apart. It's contagious. We know that positive energy pulls people together. This has real impact. This has real serious consequences to our projects. Richard Jarvin, a behavioral scientist who studied NASA in the 1990s, said this quote on the leftist part of this slide: "If we worry about every little thing, we'll never fly." That was the primary attitude that drove behaviors in the shuttle program in the 1990s. And you can see this picture is actually a picture of the Space Shuttle Columbia as it was re-entering the Earth's orbit on February 3rd, 2003, moments before it started to disintegrate. So this is a real example of where attitudes do impact behaviors, and behaviors have real consequences. Now, they may not be as dramatic as the Space Shuttle Columbia, but we have real impacts to our projects in terms of the monies that are being spent to execute, the investment of that of those monies and that human capital, and the results and the benefits that we're trying to achieve, the careers of ourselves, our team leaders, our stakeholders, our sponsors. These are all impacted by a lot of the team's ability to exhibit the proper attitudes and behaviors to create this positive energy on projects. Another favorite quote from mine from Tom Peters is, he says, "The whole discipline and art of project management is going to be the essence of management training, operational excellence, and value added." He says, "People skills will increasingly determine an organization's success. Teams will voluntarily come together to solve complex problems using global resources, essentially replacing the modern-day corporation." And he goes on to say, "Project managers with a knack for memorizing the PMBOK will be the glue." Now, of course, he doesn't actually say that. I misread that. What he really says on this slide is project managers with a knack for people skills will be the glue. So we have to ask ourselves this question. I think this is a question that I asked of myself several years ago as the project management industry started to grow and flourish. And now it's facing some real challenging times in these economic times. Do we align our career with the PMO and the structure of the PMO? Or do we align our career with this idea of competency and the entrepreneurial shift associated with that? J. Davison Frame, in his book, The New Project Manager, talks about project managers should have an entrepreneurial nature to them in their organizations to drive change. Do we invest all our education and professional development around developing the best templates, or do we focus on creativity? Do we focus on the lowest price for a basic service, or do we focus on professionalism? I think these are serious questions that we have to ask ourselves as individuals. Where do I provide the most value? And I think for a long time we've seen the PMO and a lot of the money being invested in PMO structures. It led many of us to gravitate towards that. But we also have a lot of people out there promoting leadership and competency. And how do these two things marry up to one another? Do they conflict one another? I think are important questions. There's huge commoditization pressures in our industry today. As the PMBOK guide, as the project management body of knowledge and the PMP certification have become more prevalent, right? The numbers have increased dramatically over the past 10, 15 years. Project management has become less mysterious. That's great.